welcome back, everyone, to our limited series on technology-enabled compliance and action. As a quick reminder, I'm your host, Patrick Sullivan, VP of Customer Success here at A-LIGN Compliance and Security. Joining me, we have Bianca and Steph. Ladies, how are you?
Hey, Patrick, doing well.
Thank you so much for being back. Well, of course. Thanks for being here. Just a quick recap for those folks that have been listening to us. Just a reminder of some of the things that we've discussed during this series, really just working to address one of the biggest concerns that we see as we engage with our customers and the market in general, and that is the lack of understanding that compliance really cannot be treated as a destination, as a one-time event that happens in isolation. But for organizations to be successful over the long term, we must, and you must, really consider compliance to be part of the journey of your organization. To that end, compliance must be integrated into other operations in such a way that we fully consider the impact of the people that you have working on compliance processes and the technology being employed to ensure that you have appropriate control in place and that evidence of that control can be produced when needed. So again, as we think about compliance, we really want you to think of compliance in the context of your operations, not a single one-time event. Now, as we do think about operations, compliance operations in particular, you'll see that it's very common to talk about three domains of operations: our people, our process, and our technology. Now, at A-LIGN, we've taken that a step further based on our experience and our desire to further refine and make plain what it is we mean when we say compliance operations. To the extent that as we think about our people, we really want you to know that we bring to bear subject matter experts to ensure that we are providing the most up-to-date and relevant feedback and information that can be provided at any point in time. Next, the process that we employ is continually evolving to meet the needs not only of the compliance standards themselves, but also of you and of the market. We're going to spend a little bit of time in just a moment looking at how we ensure we continue to mature our processes. And then lastly, technology, the streamlined technology as it relates to ensuring that burden is minimized for organizations through their compliance journey really is what prompted this conversation to begin with. And that is largely because we see a confusion, a misunderstanding, a lack of full understanding in the market today around the benefit of technology platforms. While technology platforms can absolutely reduce a burden, reduce a pain for organizations as they begin their journey, technology platforms are just a component. They will never be a silver bullet that allows organizations to forego all the other things that are necessary to ensure their operations are maintained. Other things like ensuring that you engage with and partner with true subject matter experts to validate and to ensure that what you've employed in your environment to protect your customer data is actually up to date and relevant. And then lastly, as I mentioned, ensuring that processes are in place to continually mature the overlap and the operation of the technology platforms for evidence collection, review, inquiry. All of those things must be shepherded in such a way that continuous improvement becomes the focus, as opposed to doing just enough to slide over the line at the last minute. Now, to that end, Bianca, you have actually developed something that we're calling a compliance maturity model. And I wondered if you might be willing to talk to us just a little bit about that today.
Absolutely. And I think it pulls back to your earlier comment on, we know that this is intentional. It is a journey, right? And one of the things that both you and Steph spoke to in our last episode is that where there's focus, there's progress, yes. Right? And so when we think about where you might be in your journey, it's focusing on the things that you have or meeting you where you're at that allow us to employ those innovative processes because we understand the needs of where you might be at in your journey. So to speak more specifically to it, you can see, for those of you that are watching this visual podcast, right? There's a flywheel on the screen, and we're going to start in the upper right hand corner. In seeing the initial stage, right? This is where, if you are a startup, if you are, this is your first rodeo, as it were, in the compliance space, right? You are probably at this stage where you probably don't have a dedicated compliance team. You likely don't have formal processes in place, and you haven't thought about what controls you might want to have in place for your business. And that's okay, right? Because there are people who can help guide you through this. There are other people that you might speak to that say, what was really helpful for me this first time was doing X, Y, and Z, right? The beauty of what we do at A-LIGN is we have an information request list, so we can show you, like, in order to understand if you are fully compliant in the way that you had anticipated, or that would make other businesses feel confident in your cybersecurity, right? We have a list of things that we look for. And so, Steph, maybe you can speak to a little bit about how we support some of those people who might be in the initial stage.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things that we do is, on that initial kickoff call, we talk about what the business needs are, first and foremost, of the organization. Yes. Why are you chasing this compliance journey? Are you doing it because someone told you you had to? Are you doing it for your own good and your own self-awareness of your organization? And what are your driving needs? Understanding timelines naturally and working backwards from those. And then education. Really a lot of education on how the process works, what to expect. I say this all the time, and I think it's really important. I tell other adults this frequently. Adults don't like surprises. So, no, it's one of those things that we all really should probably acknowledge about the adult world more than what we do. But we educate on what that process will look like, what the big milestones are of going through an audit. Because if it's your first time, you really don't know what to expect. I think it's a lot scarier. It sounds a lot scarier than what it truly is. And it's the fear of the unknown, and once you know what to expect, it's a lot easier. So that first initial onset of explaining what is an information request list, what is an IRL, why do we have milestones that we're going to guide you to have certain pieces of evidence collected by a specific timeline. It's so that your audit will go well, and it's so that we can gain an understanding. And then really kind of the second phase of that is, prepping and planning and being there along for the ride of helping you understand what the information request list is. And then the third piece of the journey there is what we call field work, but the time in which your auditor is spending dedicated hours, days, weeks with you if needed, depending on the scope of your systems. They will spend a lot of time interviewing, asking questions. The evidence is wonderful, and it will take us so far, whether it's auto-collected or it's manually collected. Our auditors still will need to spend some time with you, especially if it's your first audit, to learn what your environment is. It's a great learning experience, really, because on the other end, the client understands, oh, these are the types of questions that I'll be asked. Okay, this is a learning experience from both sides, from different perspectives, right? The auditor is learning about the system and the scope of the work being done in the audit, and the client is really learning about how an audit kind of bobs and weaves. So there's several different learning stages, but initially, those are the key peaks that really stick out to me.
And Steph, as you say this, I think about taking tests in school and always remember feeling so much more comfortable with multiple choice rather than fill in the blank questions. And I think in so many ways, our customers that have not walked through an assessment before really feel like they've got 1,000 fill in the blank questions that they're chasing after. And it just doesn't have to be that way. It just doesn't have to be that way when approached the right way. Bianca, certainly. You said, and it's okay. And that I think is something that everyone needs to really own. I mean, the beauty of maturity is that you don't start things fully formed. And there really is a way to approach maturity and compliance operations in such a way that you don't have to boil the ocean. Working with teams, stuff like yours, that can help organizations understand what's needed and what the next step in maturity is, really does make all the difference in the world.
Yeah. And to what Stephanie had said, right, there's adults don't like surprises, and there's an element of you don't know what you don't know, right? How do I capture this information that is going to be vital to my understanding of how to go through this process? Where do I find it, right? How do I even get started? And one of the things that we do in our platform is offer readiness assessments. So how do you actually know when you're truly ready or where you might have a gap? We have a way to help you explore that and feel confident, right? We've talked a lot about trust and confidence and feeling like, you know what? I'm going to knock this out of the park. I feel really good about this. I feel good about how I'm setting my business up for success. And then let's say you've already gone through your first audit. You have a much broader understanding of what it entails, what you have to go through, what the steps are, right? You want to make this process repeatable. And that's how we move into this other section of the flywheel, where maybe you've built out your team a little bit more to have someone dedicated to compliance, because again, compliance is an intentional action. It's something that you want to set it up by design, but it's something you need to monitor. It's something you need to, understand, put your finger on the pulse of where you are with compliance. Maybe you have some basic processes in place, and maybe you already have some controls that you've set forth to say, this is what we want to follow. This is what we want to enforce. And so going through that repeatable phase, right, you've graduated from that initial, a little bit more of what to expect. Maybe you understand what type of service you're looking for in an audit, right? Like, do you want someone who's collaborative? Do you want someone who's going to be committed to your compliance journey?
What kind of partner are you looking for? That makes total sense. Yes.
Yep.
And then Steph, and Bianca, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, please. I was gonna kick it to Steph anyway.
Well, and Steph, as we've talked about this in the past, you've talked about this circle almost becoming a funnel, almost a vortex, wherein once we hit that repeatable stage, necessarily the boundary gets smaller and smaller and smaller. I don't know if you'd care to unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Bianca said it very well. You're learning the broad spectrum of what an audit is, really, after the first time that you go through it. It's a phenomenal learning experience on, I think, a mindset shift of anticipating, right? What could those questions be in my next audit? If I applied the same type of audit to a different system or a different scope of my organization, if you have multiple products or, what have you, it kind of opens the door. But generally, when we're speaking about a SOC 2, there are several control families within the security category that have general requests and general controls that apply to your entire organization because they apply to the way that you organize, hire, distribute information, ensure that everyone's trained on appropriate security awareness, tactics. All of those things are transferable. So transferable knowledge to the next audit. And when I think about the sphere of the audit or the sphere of the compliance journey, really, the circle and how we go around, I imagine it to get smaller and smaller and smaller as you go from one audit to the next audit. And that's in multiple perspectives, right? So not only from your first SOC 2 to your second SOC 2 on an annual basis, because you've learned so much, but also from your SOC 2 to when you decide to go to HIPAA or an ISO. Or
yes.
I imagine your knowledge to go up, your workload to go down. I know it's more audits, but because of that transferable knowledge, the requests also tend to overlap. So there are many requests that overlap between SOC and HIPAA, between SOC, HIPAA, and ISO. Same, for several other standards that are out there. As you travel that journey, you are picking up so much speed and momentum from the things that you already have set in place. You've already had an auditor tell you this is working well. It was operating effectively, if you will. And now you have confidence in that, and you can go on to the next thing, and you can worry about the things that you're not so confident about instead of the things that you know are in place. And as long as those systems are there and you've got the right people controlling or managing the controls, you've got less to worry about. And that's why I imagine the circle of life of an audit to get a little bit quicker. You know, you can travel around the sun a little bit faster. And there's so much speed to pick up, whether it's knowledge or it's overlap of requests from audit to audit. It really is, it's only up from the beginning of your compliance journey once you take that first leap.
And it sounds so much, Steph, like you're talking about the concept of leverage, you know, driving a maximum output from a minimum input. And it feels like maturity and partnering with the right group is what allows organizations to create that leverage that they're looking for.
100%. You know, someone asked me not too long ago, what makes your organization align? What makes your organization unique? What makes them a great organization? And I said, I'll give you the nerdy answer. And I said, it's the breadth of services. It's the breadth of services, because if you are looking to take a compliance journey and you are not looking to check the box, we are going to be able to offer you an absolute powerhouse of a lineup of different compliance options for your needs. And you can have a one-stop shop. And we have SMEs, subject matter experts, that are spread across the board that are very, very good at what they do. And then you add on the technology piece and then forget about it, right? So it's the breadth of services for me. But we can't fail to give credit to the technology, because it's really what helps us connect all of those different services together from the sense of overlap and leverage from one audit to the next, and deduplicating requests in an information request list. We're not, you know, our ISO team and our SOC team and our PCI teams, they're not going to ask you for those same requests over and over again. They're going to ask you to provide those one time. And that's so much leverage as well there. And the technology is kind of the glue that holds it together. Without it, you know, it would be a much more challenging journey. But that's, to me, what makes, you know, what we're doing here very unique and special, one-stop shop. And I personally don't like, you know, Bianca said this in a couple of podcasts ago. Do you want to go to multiple grocery stores to get the ingredients that you want? If I could get the best ingredients from from the same spot, I would do that every day. If I have to drive to several grocery stores, I suppose I will. But it depends on who's asking for the meal to be cooked, right? So.
Which kind of brings us back to this stage of maturity we're in. Bianca, we've labeled an area managed, which I think kind of means we've hit a point where we feel very confident in how we're thinking about compliance, how we're thinking about controls, how we're thinking about some other things. Would you care to maybe unpack what the managed stage of the model references?
Yeah, you probably have a larger dedicated team than in the repeatable stage, right? In repeatable, you're probably just focused on, okay, I did my first SOC 2 audit. Maybe I did my second SOC 2 audit. I want to make sure I can go through this process again, maybe make it slightly easier. But in the managed stage, right, maybe you have a larger dedicated team. You are exploring different things to put in place. And you're really focused on, how do I allow the people that I have on my team to focus on revenue generating activities? Is there a way that I can make this a little bit simpler, right? And that kind of feeds into that optimized stage of, listen, I know my compliance maturity in and out in my organization. You know, we feel very mature in how we handle compliance, in how we speak to it and share that language throughout our organization, where the entire organization understands the importance of it. And we have a dedicated team that focuses on it and are really, like, they have a seat at the table.
Yes. And Steph, to use your analogy, it's almost like at this point we've identified our ingredients, we've identified our suppliers. We know what the recipe is to create what we want. We simply have to move to a stage where we execute consistently against that recipe. And honestly, I feel like because of how we've chosen to partner with our customers, we become an ideal partner for most organizations that have decided what it is they wish to create with their compliance operations and need someone to help not only hold them accountable, but to help keep them moving forward. Again, I want to thank everyone for their time, for joining us for our limited series on technology-enabled compliance. As we've said and will continue to say, we hope to be the best partner for you as we possibly can along your journey. We would love to be the single hand that you choose to hold. But nonetheless, should you have any questions, should you have any feedback, should you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to reach out to Bianca, Steph, or myself. We're always happy to help any way that we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you.